Hello, I'm Chris Fowler, and welcome to Sports Century. Genius tends to show up early, and so it was in the 6th grade John Elway first turned heads. Even then, as a running back for the Little Grizzly team in Missoula, Montana, he had that flair for the dramatic. Jack Elway arrived late for his son's first game and inquired, "What did I miss?" A fellow coach replied, "Either every other kid in the field is the worst football player I've ever seen, or your boy is the greatest."
John Elway was the golden boy. He was the most perfect quarterback that God ever created.
John, I think, epitomized the gunslinger image that you have of great quarterbacks.
I always admired the things that John could do, being able to get out of the pocket and throw on the run, throw across the field 40, 50 yards. At times you'd say, how the heck did he do that?
Here comes the blitz. He steps away from it and lets the pass go long.
Are you kidding me?
He's going for a touchdown.
You're kidding me.
John Elway had played a lot of years and had won some games and had finally seemed to be delivering on the promise that he held when he was drafted, but still his career lacked a defining moment.
In his 4th season, Elway led the Broncos into the 1986 AFC Championship game at Cleveland. With less than 6 minutes left, the Browns scored a touchdown to take a 2013 lead.
You're trying to think of what you're going to do from an attack standpoint, and then all of a sudden you got a couple of plays in mind, and then you fumble a kickoff.
It hits at the 15, takes a strange bounce, and the Broncos are still trying to fall on it at the 2. And the Broncos are 98 yards away from where they need to go.
We were being bombarded with dog bones. And I'm not talking about your little chewables, those big, huge dog bones.
The majority of the players in the huddle really felt like this was something that was probably not going to happen. John Elway came in the huddle, and when you look at this guy's eyes, it makes you believe in yourself. And I've never seen anyone so competitive in my life.
On a cold, windswept stage set for high drama, the Broncos' young gun took the snap at the Denver 15 and stepped into harm's way.
Elway's dropped the play fake, runs up in the pocket, running left, has the first down.
John Elway with the ball. Can he do it? Will he do it? Is he going to be a failed superstar?
Elway to pass on first down. The pass for Sewell. Got it and keeps it at the 48-yard line, and was he hammered.
After a sack, Elway faced 3rd and 18 at the Cleveland 48, and with 1:47 left, fortune intervened.
We got really lucky because it was loud there. We're on a silent count. We had Steve Watson in motion.
But the ball came up early, and it actually caromed off of Steve Watson's hip.
Watson in motion, snap to Elway, and Elway's pass is coming and caught inside the 30-yard line.
If he needed 13 yards, he got 14 yards. And if he needed 3, he got 4.
Play after play after play, you think the inevitable was going to happen, and that was that we were going to stop him. But play after play after play, your heart sunk a little bit lower.
2nd and 10, 14-yard line. Snap Elway, running to his right, trying to direct traffic. He's at the 10. John's at the 5 and skids out of bounds at the 4-yard line.
He was a joyful man during that drive, and it was like this was the moment that he lived for.
We got on a roll, and you kind of get in that zone where you're not thinking about too much other than getting that football in the end zone, and we had the momentum.
Mark Jackson in motion. The snap to Elway. The look.
I'm looking back to see who's going to catch the ball, and John's looking at me.
The throw.
And his eyes are about the size of Millen's.
Touchdown!
I wish someone had a clock on it, but I would imagine that most Major League Baseball players wouldn't have been able to hit it.
John Elway has just thrown the touchdown to Mark Jackson, 5 yards, and the Broncos are 1 point away from tying it.
It was almost from the point of being put to death, and all of a sudden you get new life, and then we got the game to overtime. It was kind of like, if we get to overtime, we'll win it. And I think Cleveland felt the same way. Get the ball to John, it's a done deal.
Elway takes the snap, steps up in the pocket, and here comes the pressure, and John's on the run. He's at the 50, throws the ball upfield, fingertip catch at the Cleveland 22-yard line by Watson, who is hammered.
It was just totally quiet. Even in the dog pound, everyone was at the edge of their seat, and they couldn't scream anymore. They could only watch in anticipation of what eventually happened.
2 Elway completions covered 50 yards and set up Rich Carlos's 33-yard field goal attempt.
Ball is down. Carlos's kick is on the way, and it is good. The Denver Broncos have come from behind to win it in overtime.
The people from the league office who had moved the championship trophy into the Browns locker room, which makes a lot of sense, and I remember them behind us running feverishly from one locker room to the other, along with the announcers.
Elway, when he got back on the plane, and his first reaction was, wow! He could not believe what he had done.
Elway's fourth quarter countdown heroics in the 23-20 victory would become known as the drive and foreshadow an extended career of extraordinary grace under pressure.
16 games a season, 47 comebacks. 3 years of his career he spent bringing the Broncos back in the fourth quarter.
You could see the uneasiness in a team's eyes when we were playing them and they were ahead in the fourth quarter. You know, they anticipated something bad was going to happen.
Elway firing to Smith.
When there's time on the clock, any amount of time, John feels that he can make some plays to get us in a position to win the game.
Under those circumstances, you're part Indiana Jones, you're part David Copperfield, and you better be all heart.
He helped other players that may have been average players in this game rise up to a level that they didn't even know they could play out because he expected you to do that. You either did or you got out of his huddle. It was simple as that.
Play action. Gonna throw for the end zone. Shannon shot. Touchdown.
Somebody asked me one time, Marty, if you had one game to win, who would you want to be your quarterback? And I said, I think Joe Montana, but if I only had one play, I'd want John Elway.
January 4th, 1992. In a divisional playoff game against Houston, Elway stepped into the pressure chamber with the Broncos down 24-23 in the fourth quarter.
They were on the 2-yard line with just over 2 minutes to play. No timeouts left. So it's virtually identical to the drive. Elway steps up on 4th down, season on the line. If he doesn't make a play, the season's over. Everybody goes home.
The one that stands out to me was John Elway's scramble once again. It looked like the pocket protection had broken down. He wound up scrambling out of the pocket, and he finds Vance Johnson on just like a little dump pass, and Vance scoots for about 30 yards down the field.
Elway's 2 fourth-down conversions led to a game-winning field goal.
He needed that game against Houston to sort of validate that the one that he had against Cleveland was the real deal. I think that underscored the fact that this guy truly is a comeback master.
He loves to compete, and those drives are really an extension of his personality.
It must have been a family trait because everything we did, we competed at, whether it be getting my dad's bathrobe or getting his slippers as fast as we could get them.
What, do you want to play darts? Or you want to shoot pool? Or you want to play Papa Shot? What do you want me to beat you in?
One of my buddies was playing pool over his house, Bubby Brister, and he beat John on his pool table. Nobody had ever beaten him at his house on this pool table. And it was on a Saturday night. Monday morning, John sold the table and bought a new one.
If people dislike me because I get upset if I lose, you know, that's okay with me because I'm all about winning. I like to win and I don't like to lose.
John Albert Elway was born in Port Angeles, Washington on June 28, 1960, 10 minutes ahead of his twin sister, Jana. With a second sister, Leanne, just a year and a half older, John faced competition early.
Well, Jana gave him a run for his money, and then the oldest one, I always say, made him tough. And the girls would, you know, if I said something, they'd mind, but John would dare me, so I would have to chase him a lot with this wooden spoon. So I always say I taught him to scramble the way he does.
From as young as I can remember, maybe 2 years old, he was infatuated with any type of game and any type of ball.
A former quarterback and longtime college coach, Elway's father, Jack, directed his son's education with an eye to athletics.
All the neighborhood kids were going to kindergarten, the ones John should have been going to kindergarten with. He didn't. His dad held him back a year started him a year late in school to allow him to be a better athlete.
Jack sensed right away that his son had a special talent. He had a feeling that this boy could really be something.
He always wanted one more game, one more shot, one more throw, one more bucket of balls.
John was Jack's hobby. Jack would tell him the right way to do something, and John would just practice it. And he wanted to play with his dad rather than a lot of the other kids.
He was also a guy that was really kind of the guy that I always went to when things got rough or I had questions. It was always important for me to make him proud of me.
Even when John was in high school and all the other kids would go out, say the pizza parlor or a dance or something after a game, John always came home and talked to his dad about, they went over all the plays.
You know, in high school, John was so shy. He was so pure in high school. The thought of him, you know, drinking anything or, you know, drugs or anything was so foreign. And especially in those day and age, you know, where drugs and alcohol were prevalent, John was so pure.
My son grew up on the sidelines at about 5 years of age, following John around. And he was in T-ball, and I remember he had gone up to John and asked John, I come to all your games, would you come to one of my games, you know? And that was kind of the end of it. And it was right before the prom. Here comes John on Saturday morning with his date to watch my son play T-ball for an hour and a half when the rest of the kids were at the beach getting the prom glow.
When Jack Elway moved his family to Southern California in 1976, he helped to create an environment in which his son's quarterback talents could flourish.
He'd gotten a job as head football coach at Cal State Northridge. He actually went and talked to the coaches to find out what kind of offense they ran. And he found Jack Newmeyer at Granada Hills High School, who's the throwing quarterback.
He really knew the passing game and was very progressive and ahead of his time as far as the offensive concept was concerned.
We had a West Coast offense, which was rare for that day and age.
We all kind of looked over at John and thought, oh my gosh, you know, who's this little scrawny kid? He's not even going to have a chance here because he just looks so small and skinny.
He was a tall, skinny, rocket-armed quarterback out of nowhere, and he just threw BBs, you know, rockets.
Elway back to throw. Got a man open, going in the end zone. It is touchdown, Granada Hills!
Despite a knee injury that ended his senior season early at Granada Hills High, Elway threw for 1,837 yards and 19 touchdowns that year. When he wasn't throwing passes, he was throwing a baseball, fast and hard.
The guy would come in and basically throw 91, 92, 93 miles an hour. In high school, that's going to shut down most people if you're throwing strikes.
He threw people out at first base when balls were hit to right field, when I had him in right field. Paul Shepard was our center fielder, and he used to make plays in the gaps, and he flipped the ball to John to throw in.
Elway took his multi-sport talent to Stanford. After driving in 50 runs in 49 games as a sophomore, he signed with the Yankees and hit .318 for their Class A team at Oneonta, New York in the summer of '82. In football, Elway engineered several impressive upsets.
Oklahoma had a reputation of winning at home. Nobody comes in your backyard and steals a game. And Stanford did that, and John Elway was the reason that they did that.
He beat Washington. Washington was the #1 ranked team, and he just did it because he was an outstanding athlete that had great mental toughness.
If Elway's final game provided a glimpse into his future, it also ended in heartache. Converting on 4th and 17 late in the fourth quarter against arch-rival Cal, Elway led Stanford on a brilliant drive that ended with a field goal and a 20-19 lead. With just seconds left, it appeared Elway was headed to his first bowl game.
The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. Oh, the band is out on the field. He's going to go in the end zone. Oh, my God.
But you know what's tragic about that, in a sense, was that when the game was over, there was no mention of that drive. It was one of the great drives in the history of college football, really.
Second to Herschel Walker in the Heisman voting in 1982, Elway finished his college career passing for 77 touchdowns and more than 9,000 yards. Now he faced a critical juncture, the NFL or the Yankees.
We went and spent time with Steinbrenner, and he wined and dined us. And he was very serious about John becoming a Yankee.
Hi, hello, and welcome to the New York Sheraton Hotel in New York City for the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Player Draft.
Baltimore selects as the first choice in the draft quarterback John Elway of Stanford.
He warned the Colts beforehand that he wouldn't sign with them, and they drafted him anyway, and Elway wasn't going to play there. I mean, he was that kind of stubborn guy.
We were going to find out how strong those statements were. I picked the right guy. My job was to pick the greatest player in the country. I did.
When they actually drafted him, he was on the phone with Frank Cushion going through the whole deal. The coach was a mean sucker, and his dad didn't coach that way.
I said, Mr. Cush, I said, I don't want to be a jerk or anything about it. I said, we've been telling you for 3 months that I'm not going to play in Baltimore, and I know for a fact you've been offered 3 1s and a quarterback, and you turned that down, and right now you have nothing. And then I hung his phone up.
He was looked on as, rebellious, arrogant, way too brash for the time, a guy who wanted more leverage than he ever deserved. I mean, that just didn't happen.
Because at that time, there was no free agency, and so I think there was a sense that John felt maybe he was kind of special.
Convinced their recalcitrant draft pick would play for the Yankees, the Colts traded Elway to Denver, where a 5-year, $5 million contract made him the highest-paid player in the NFL and a marked man.
For a guy like Elway to come and say, well, I want to be on the West Coast and I want to be on the beach and I'm a California boy, well, who cares what you are? And he said, well, I'll play baseball. Play baseball. You should play baseball. Because in my opinion, he's not the kind of guy you win championships with. He never did it when he was at Stanford. I don't think he'll do it at Denver. Personally, don't care if he ever does it.
Did I know a lot of people didn't like me? Yeah, I knew they didn't like me.
Indeed, Elway's rookie year was a fierce test of his physical and mental faculties. Nowhere was the test tougher than in the city he had spurned.
We saw these white hats on all the Baltimore fans, and as we approached the crowd, we saw that the hat said, "Kill Elway."
It was pretty much of a rude awakening, I think, and he was pretty miserable. And I think that he ended up losing quite a bit of weight. He was real tall and thin at the time, and I don't know, it sounded like maybe he had made the wrong decision.
Elway, in a late season game against San Diego, lined up behind the guard. He didn't even line up behind the center. He was so confused, so rattled.
So rattled that he threw twice as many interceptions as touchdowns in that 1983 season. Meanwhile, head coach Dan Reeves rode his rookie with spurs.
Dan was very hard on him his first year or two, biting criticism on the sideline in front of his teammates, something that I'm sure John Elway was not used to.
Early in his career against the Chargers, he threw a bad interception, and he threw a lot of interceptions. And when he came off the field, Reeves openly in front of the team started screaming at him. And Elway turned to him and said, "Don't you ever talk to me like that again."
Dan Reeves was a backup running back for most of his career. Here was a guy on the other side, John Elway, who had immense talent, as much as anybody who'd ever come in the league, and his coach felt like he wasn't utilizing that talent to the maximum.
Both men were very demanding in their own rights, so control freaks. I remember Reeves saying early on, I don't want to be known as the guy who ruins Elway, but he pretty well set out to try and accomplish that at times. He put Elway in some very poor positions early on because I don't think he knew how to handle a young, raw quarterback who had so many great gifts.
In fact, I remember John Elway saying, you paid all of this to get me here. Use me. Use me. It was a plea at first. Then it was a demand.
It was anguishing for Elway to see Marino put up those numbers, Montana put up those numbers, but more importantly, play their game in a system that called for constant passing. And here he was stuck in an offense that sort of resembled a Model T.
There's a lot more to it than just, looking at it and saying, hey, he's conservative. If you're conservative, we won an awful lot of games being that way, and I don't have anything to apologize for.
And there was a lot of weight on my shoulder because of the expectations and what I did as far as demanding the trade or I'd play baseball. So that there was pressure there on both of us.
In 1984, Reeves hired Florida offensive coordinator Mike Shanahan. Elway bonded almost instantly with the new assistant.
Shanahan not only served as a buffer between the two of them, but he also served as John's eyes and ears and mind.
If you look at it in terms of boxing, Dan wanted to go the distance. Mike wanted to knock you out early. And I think John really liked that.
It was really a buddy-buddy relationship when I first started in the league. I was 30 years old or 31 years old, and at that time I think John was 23, 24, so the age difference wasn't a lot.
Under Shanahan, Elway began to blossom, and in the 1986 season, he led the Broncos to the Super Bowl. But success did nothing to soothe the strained three-way relationship.
It's sort of a classic soap opera of the bright, young, brilliant assistant and perhaps threatening the head coach, and the head coach worrying a little, and maybe his most extreme moments thought, are those guys in collusion against me?
Shanahan, I think he got caught in the middle of the whole thing, and he felt like Dan gave John Elway play calling responsibility because he came in on Tuesday to accept that role on the player's day off when Dan basically dared him to do it. Okay, if you want to call plays, then you come in on Tuesday and game plan with the coaches. Well, John did.
After 4 seasons under Reeves, Shanahan took the head coaching job of the Raiders in 1988. Fired the next year, he returned to Denver as quarterbacks coach and became part of a bitter three-way feud.
First time Elway publicly criticized Dan and revealed the strain in the relationship, Dan was initially mad about Mike Shanahan not telling him that this had been an issue. In fact, when he read it in the newspaper, Dan was so mad, he went into Mike Shanahan's office and threw the newspaper at him.
Those are things, if you got a problem, you need to, talk internally about it.
We got some things that are aired out, and I think that, hopefully in the long run, they're really going to help us.
They rubbed each other the wrong way. They had a chance to win 3 Super Bowls, and they couldn't pull it off. Had they won one, my feeling is that their relationship would have been different.
We'd play in the big games, championship games, and then get to the Super Bowl and just not play well. And it always reflects on a quarterback when you don't win a big game like that.
In January of 1987, after beating the Browns, the Broncos got off to a promising start against the Giants in Elway's first Super Bowl.
The Broncos had the ball on near the New York Giants goal line with a chance to go up 17-7, be in the driver's seat. They're overmatched in the trenches. It's very significant. They're forced to settle for a field goal, and they have to settle for even less.
Carlos is no good.
The Denver Broncos weren't a 53-man team. They were a one-man team, and their one man was under siege once the score became somewhat one-sided.
Despite Elway passing for 304 yards, the Giants won 39-20, scoring 30 points in the second half. The next season, Elway was the league's MVP as he guided the Broncos back to the Super Bowl. And again, Denver took the early lead.
Certainly looked like we're going to rout the Washington Redskins in that game after going up 10-zip. And everything was working pretty good as far as our offense goes. Everyone was confident. I don't think anyone was thinking about the year before.
The game just turned around on us, turned out to get out of hand in the second quarter. I've never once saw John give up or quit.
Scoring 35 points in the second quarter, the Redskins crushed the Broncos 42-10.
The whole feeling in the locker room is not, hey, we made it to the Super Bowl. We were one of 2 teams that were able to get here. It was more of, we failed.
Dan Reeves fingered the defense for the blame. He fired a bunch of defensive coaches, but once those people were gone, those heads had been handed out to the public, all that was left was a quarterback who had failed to deliver twice in championship situations.
In the 1989 season, Elway got another chance at Super Bowl redemption against the defending champion 49ers.
There was talk and stories of people who did not want the Broncos to go back to the Super Bowl so that they would not have to endure any more humiliation than they already had.
Elway throws the interception to Michael Walter.
But Denver's discontent worsened as Joe Montana put the Broncos into a 27-3 hole from which Elway couldn't recover.
We just killed them 55-10, and the game was over at halftime.
And that was the ultimate humiliating point for Elway, the bottom point of his career.
I think our entire team just felt like, what's the use?
And that sentiment ran throughout the state of Colorado, the city of Denver, back to our locker room.
It was a shame that Elway didn't win the game. It was a shame that it wasn't a little closer, because I knew what a lot of people in the press box were going to be writing. You know, big loser again.
Elway takes the snap and runs it in for a touchdown. Thanks to Elway's patented last-second magic, the final score of Super Bowl 30. Denver 7, San Francisco 56.
There was just so much pressure on him. I mean, you know, everybody was starting to question, can he win the big game?
The negative fallout of 3 lost Super Bowls worsened Elway's relationship with Reeves.
My personal opinion is there has to be some changes, and I don't know if Dan's going to give in to that or if he's not.
I thought the one singular event that divided them beyond repair was John needing help mid-90s trying to get to a Super Bowl. John asked for a wide receiver, and Dan drafts a quarterback, Tommy Maddox.
They were talking to Washington about trading me, so I knew that there was some desire that if the right deal came up, then I was going to be traded.
Dan had talked to the Redskins about a deal for Elway, and I think that told Bolin all he needed to know about the relationship between Reeves and Elway, and in the end it came down to it was either or.
Obviously something had to be done, and time was running out. Mr. Bolin wanted to win a championship, and he wanted to win a championship with John.
On December 28, 1992, after 10 bittersweet, tantalizing seasons, Elway would have a new head coach.
In Denver today, the issue was simple. Pat Bolin owns the team. Dan Reeves was simply running it. And today, Reeves was fired.
When Dan Reeves left, there was a question about whether John Elway had orchestrated his departure, whether he had gone to Pat Bolin and threatened to retire.
The notion that I let Dan go because of John is not correct. You know, I let Dan go for a host of reasons, the least of which might have been John and his relationship.
I know I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I've always said that. I'm not sure that is mutually the case.
July of '93, I was walking with John Elway out to the practice field. I said, how bad was it? And he said, it was hell. Life with Dan was hell. We instantly called up Dan Reeves to get his reaction. He said, well, you told John it wasn't exactly heaven for me either.
Reeves probably got as much mileage out of that situation with a poor team and using Elway's skills, but Elway, I think to this day, is bothered by the fact he doesn't have Dan Marino's stats.
Under new head coach Wade Phillips, Elway experienced more freedom but fewer wins. Then, in 1995, after 2 seasons, Phillips was replaced by an old Elway favorite, Mike Shanahan, who had gone to San Francisco in 1992.
John, set your feet. Set your feet.
When Mike Shanahan came back, there was this new motivation. We can do this, new enthusiasm.
There was a sense of urgency on the parts of both John Elway and Mike Shanahan that it's got to be done now. John's going to retire as Ernie Banks.
In their second season together, a revived Elway took the Broncos to a 13-3 record. But in a divisional playoff game, the 36-year-old quarterback was outplayed by a younger Mark Brunell, who led the second-year Jaguars to a 30-27 upset.
And to have, you know, Jacksonville come in here and beat them like that, it just was a dagger through his heart.
He joked afterwards. He said, I went home and I said, maybe I should commit suicide.
I had never seen him that sad before, where he literally had tears over it. And I went in, upstairs to say prayers and tuck the kids in, and 2 of them were crying themselves because they hadn't seen him and it scared them.
I remember him after the game. It was about as low as I had ever seen him. There was the thought that the loss was so devastating to him, the organization, the entire community, that John wouldn't even have the stomach to bounce back from him.
And radio traders here? Well, for John Albert Elway, that's why.
When I would travel as mayor around the country, people would ask about the Broncos and John Elway. When I traveled around the world, people would ask about John Elway and the Broncos.
We're in Mexico, and you got little kids going, hey, Juan Elway. And he goes, how do these guys know me down here? I said, you're worldwide, man.
We had an autograph session set up in Tokyo as part of an American Bowl game there, and they had to cordon off the block in 4 directions. You cannot imagine the number of people in Tokyo in line clamoring for Elway's autograph.
a very normal person. And so to be put on a pedestal for doing something that I love to do, sometimes it doesn't have the impact, or it's confusing to me the way that people look at me.
Weeks of frustration bubbled over today for veteran quarterback John Elway.
By 1989, Elway's two-sided fame as an outstanding quarterback and multiple Super Bowl loser had taken a decidedly ugly form.
John Elway is now struggling, not only on the field where touchdowns are down, completions are down, and interceptions are up, but also off the field where rumors once unheard of are now surfacing. No drugs.
Oh, no.
No drinking.
As far as?
Problem.
Oh, no. I cannot tell myself to go and put myself in that bubble at home day in and day out. I've got to be a human being and live. And if I want to go out and I'm seen having a beer in Denver, Colorado, I've got an out drinking problem. So that, I guess, is probably the most upsetting thing.
In many ways, that's part of him being a throwback, the Bobby Lane type, let's go have a beer type guy. Yeah, that hovered, hung above him for a time.
I think what John didn't like about the attention he attracted all the time, 24/7 in Denver, was that he couldn't control it.
John Elway is a greedy and scared punk who's been pampered so long that his senses are askew. I say that for this reason. He is a guy, a public figure, who wants to make all the money he can from his celebrity, and then when the spotlight gets too hot, he just wants to suddenly get away from it all.
John Elway said, I'm suffocating. They report on everything I do, how much I tip, what's wrong with my smile.
In the paper here in Denver, they had a daily Elway watch.
The Denver Post reported that he had green beans and corn for lunch. The news reported that he had green beans and asparagus.
The media approached him about what candy he was giving out on a Halloween.
And it was front page, the news. It was absolutely incredible. And I'm thinking, give me a break, what's going on here?
They made fun of his looks, some fans. He looked like a horse, and oddly enough, that bothered Elway as much as anything.
When everything looks like it's being handed to you, when you have fame, fortune, I think a lot of people look for chinks in the armor.
If Elway could not avoid microscopic public attention, he somehow was able to maintain a private family life with his wife Janet and their son and 3 daughters.
There's a certain softness brought to your life by having women there. There's a certain quality of gentleness that you can get and compassion that you can get.
First time I went to John's house to do a photo shoot, John had walked in, the house was kind of all over the place because the kids were getting ready for a holiday, and John yelled out to the family, whose turn is it to do pooper patrol? The kids quickly pointed out that it was Daddy's turn to pick up the dog poop.
He was always just a guy to me. He was just a friend, and we respected the fact that he needed to find quiet, hideaway places for us to have a beer, have a good time.
We left the bar one night. We're racing down Broadway at about 1:30 in the morning. We're running about 95 miles an hour. I'm going, stupid. That's the kind of fun we had. And then, we'd be drinking. I'd take him home. He lived out in Shenango. And I said, boy, there's a lot of rabbits out here. He goes, you got your gun with you? I said, yeah. I said, let's shoot them. So the next time we're going up to Shenango, and all these $1 million homes, and we're shooting a .22 pistol at all these rabbits. I'm going, can we get thrown in jail for this? He goes, yeah, probably.
Well, off the field, he's an easy-going guy, but you know what? He was out there running with the team. He was in the weight room lifting with the guys. He did everything that everybody else did. He never globbed onto the fact that he could be a prima donna. He just wasn't that way. And I really respected him for that.
Elway doesn't win the Super Bowl. You've remembered the way we remember Jim Kelly to an extent, Dan Marino to an extent. Great passer, great quarterback, almost a champion.
In January of 1998, Elway got another chance to still the echoes of his failure. But the task seemed greater than ever. The Broncos were 11.5-point underdogs to the defending Super Bowl champion Packers.
For one person to lead the team the entire year to a Super Bowl victory is nearly impossible. You have to have that supporting cast. And it came in the form of a running game with Terrell Davis.
It was the perfect balance. One of the key ingredients to us going all the way was having a back like that who basically scared every defensive coordinator in the league.
The battle was no longer Elway's to win alone. The legs of Terrell Davis were pitted against the arm of another gifted quarterback, Brett Favre. Then, with the game tied at 17 late in the third quarter, Elway's heart took center stage.
His whole career is surmised in the one play, just about his competitiveness, his toughness, his desire to win.
Almost offside, but the Packers got back on. Elway scrambling, looking, running, diving inside the 5-yard line for a first down. Is he only 37?
He looks over to the sideline and he just starts pumping his fist. And I was like, yeah, we're going to win this ball game now.
We're like, there's no way we're going to lose this game. There's absolutely no way.
That'll be the play that goes down in my mind as my greatest play, because I can remember getting up and the adrenaline that was flowing through my body when I got up.
When they saw him do that, there was nothing they could do but try to match that in their own play.
Elway's run led to a Davis touchdown, but the Packers came back to tie it at 24 early in the fourth quarter. With 3.5 minutes left, the Broncos took over on Green Bay's 49.
I remember jogging on the field going, this is my whole career right here. This is what I asked for, and this is my chance to win a Super Bowl.
Everyone knew the stakes. Everyone knew what was on the line. Everyone knew how long John had waited to be in this position.
Elway, long count. Davis. It is a rocking, standing up. Can you say Denver is in the lead?
With Denver up 31-24, it was Favre who experienced heartbreak in the waning seconds.
4th and 6 for the 31. Blitz is on. Favre hit as he throws. Pass is going to be incomplete. Denver hole. Oh, baby, they're going to win this thing. Are you kidding me?
A huge weight had finally been lifted. Elway was a winner.
He almost had the look that Rocky had when he was searching for Adrian, that where's Janet and the kids? We actually won.
I can't even remember what I said, but something like, you did it, babe. I think my smile went ear to ear, and it was stuck there for about a month.
There's one thing I want to say here tonight. It's only 4 words. This one's for John.
That silenced those critics, and so I mean that was a big relief. But also, the bigger thing was the self-satisfaction that, you know what, maybe there was some doubt after reading that all the time that you couldn't do it, whether you could or couldn't do it.
And he just kept saying, we're Super Bowl champs. We're Super Bowl champs. We walked out the stadium. He just looked back at it and said, Super Bowl champs, we won.
Covering the Broncos, you'd go in the locker room and you'd hear rap music and cutting-edge type stuff that Elway had never heard. He's in the corner whistling a Springsteen tune to himself. He clearly was much older and sort of on an island to himself.
We were all sitting around having dinner, and it was more of a joke because the kids had heard rumor at school that he was quitting and the whole deal. So one of the kids brought it up and said, Dad, is it true you're going to quit? You know, you're not going to quit. You're not ready to quit, are you? We don't want you to quit. And so he said, well, let's take a vote. So everybody voted that he couldn't quit.
I coached him. Are you kidding? I told that family, don't you dare vote for retirement.
Honoring his family's vote and his own instincts to play another season, Elway led the Broncos back to the Super Bowl. For high drama and a career climax, it couldn't have been scripted better in Hollywood.
You know, the last game of my career was going to be playing Dan Reeves in a Super Bowl. It was not only ironic, but a little bit eerie in the fact that it amazed me that that could happen.
When they played the Falcons, it was labeled as the blood feud between Mike Shanahan and John Elway on one side and Dan Reeves and the Atlanta Falcons on the other.
If John Elway had a problem with me and you're coaching it position, you know, is why did I not know that prior to reading it in the paper? That was the biggest problem I had.
Dan laid it out just the way that he felt the facts were. And this set off Mike Shanahan. He was irate. And when he heard what Dan said, then Mike served up his version. And all of a sudden, we had World War III.
We were as close as a head coach and assistant coach could be throughout 6.5 years. It just did not end the way we would like to, and sometimes I think that has to do with communication.
With perhaps the strongest offense he ever played behind, 98, Terrell Davis had rushed for more than 2,000 yards in the regular season.
You had to figure going into that game that there was no way that Dan Reeves would let John Elway beat him. And yet, oddly enough, they were determined to take away the Broncos' running game and leave it to John to beat him.
Rolls to his right, stops, loads it up, throws down deep the middle of the field. Rod Smith got it! Here we go! 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Rod Smith, Denver, touchdown!
Elway's 336 yards passing propelled the Broncos to a 34-19 victory.
Everybody talks about Ted Williams and his last at-bat hitting a home run. Well, John Elway in his last at-bat goes out not as the loser that a lot of people labeled him early, but the ultimate winner.
I think it was sweet for John because John played probably his greatest game as a football player. Walked off the field, the MVP of a Super Bowl. How many guys can say that and retire?
On May 2nd, 1999, Elway quit with 2 rings, over 50,000 yards passing, and more victories than any other NFL quarterback.
It's time. It's time for me to move on. I can't do it physically anymore, and that's really hard for me to say. Whew.
2 years after the 38-year-old Elway retired, another page of his story turned up. It was edged in black. His mentor and best friend, his father Jack, was gone at 69.
Here you are, a football coach, and you get to raise the best quarterback possibly that ever lived. It's pretty incredible. And the only sad thing was that they never really got to coach together, so to speak. Jack didn't get to coach John.
He learned so much from his dad. They really loved each other, and it was really touching to see, and especially looking back now, it's unbelievable how close they were and what a strong relationship they had.
In the afterlife of football, John Elway, despite making millions in endorsements, has yet to find his rhythm. Among his failed capital ventures are a string of upscale laundromats and an online sporting goods company. In July of 2002, tragedy struck deep. Jana, his twin sister, succumbed to cancer. But even as he grieves, Elway does what he has always done. He stays in the game. Today, he's calling the signals as co-owner of the Colorado Crush,